5% truth and 5% deception to lead people completely off course. And so we have to abide in the truth of God and understand what that truth is. But James was the pastor of the church in Jerusalem, the center of the early Christian church, and there was a lot of great work being done there in and around Jerusalem and around in other areas, yet there was all this other stuff that we're looking at. As we see the epistles by the apostles, and here in James, you see that there's always been, from the very beginning, just a lot of trouble in the church. And why is that? Because we're human beings. But not only that we're human beings, but we are now walking in complete opposition to the prince of the power of the air, the God of this world. Therefore, you're going to get opposition. You're going to get a backlash. Anytime you're walking forward in the Lord or becoming more intimate with God, you're going to get a backlash from it, because the enemy doesn't want you to mature. He doesn't want you to become strong. Doesn't want you to become mighty in the Lord, because if you do, you become a danger to what he is doing. But if you're just kind of a lukewarm Christian and you don't really do much of anything except for go to church and sing some songs and once in a while read your Bible to get some sort of encouragement, he'll completely leave you alone. So you can live a pretty peaceful life as a Christian without any spiritual warfare if you're lukewarm. But then you have to contend with God, because God doesn't desire you to walk in that type of Christian walk. But one thing is certain, that God is doing great things through his church, and there's also a lot of earthly, sensual, demonic activity happening simultaneously within the church. That's why to the world, they look at the church and they go, you guys are out of your minds. You guys are always fighting with each other. You're splitting from one another. There's all these denominations. Some people claim this, other people claim that, and they use this as a reference point and an excuse to not become Christians because of what they see in the church. There continues to be strife in the church, or there still is strife in the church today. Why? Well, where does it come from? We could chalk it up to being human, but there's more to it than this. And in chapter 4, James asks in verse 1, where do wars and fights come from among you? Do they not come from your desires for pleasure that war in your members? Before I had read this verse and others like it, I had never really stopped to ponder the source of these things. I would say, in my flesh dwells no good thing, but I never concluded that warring and fighting, the types of things that you see, the battles that go on inside the body of Christ, come from desires for pleasure. You always think, okay, I become a Christian, I leave my carnal pleasures behind, I'm walking in the Lord. Why am I at war with this person here? Why is it that this person doesn't like me? Why is it that now I'm afraid to go to this church fellowship because I know people over here have said bad things and all these things are going on in the church? You think, is it really because of that? Now, as I think about it, I realize that every war and fight, whether it be between two persons or a group of people or even entire nations, has its origin in a type of desire. A desire for pleasure for oneself, a desire to put oneself first, a desire to be over others, or at least be more right than they are. So it's either for social position or for material gain. All of this envy, jealousy, hatred, conflict, self-seeking come from our desires for pleasures which battle within us. So it begins in here. It's not something that is external, it's something that begins internally. And when the battles we fight within our hearts spill into the outside world, they infect those around us. The purest essence of sin seems to be selfishness and self-centeredness, and these lead to evil actions. So James goes on to say in verse 2, you lust and do not have, you murder and covet and cannot obtain, you fight in war, yet you do not have because you do not ask. Now they seem to be totally two different things, or two different lessons. First, James is describing things that are probably evident or have been evident in all of our lives at one time or another. You know, we don't murder people, but we lust and we covet. We murder in the way that we have unrighteous anger for one another, and yet we can't obtain. You can't get what you really want. You fight in war, yet you do not have because you do not ask. So how does that all fit together? The word lust in this context is desire to covet. So when he's talking about lusting, he's describing like a starving animal ravished by its desire for food, yet never satisfied if it gets that particular food. And we know what that's like. So we lust after things, we want things, we envy what other people have, and when we get that item, if you can work really hard or connive or do whatever you're going to do in order to get that item, you find out that it loses its luster really quickly. I don't know about the rest of you, but there are so many things that I was so excited about getting or buying or ordering through Amazon, and you get it and you love it for at least a few weeks. And then you're on the internet again shopping, or you're going out to the malls and you're shopping, because these things never can satisfy. They never fill what you really need. So he says, you murder and covet and cannot obtain. I used to think about that. Now, how many Christians are running around actually murdering each other over the things that they want from each other? I would say, I don't know anyone. So then I go back to Matthew 5, verse 21 through 24, where Jesus said, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause, or without a righteous cause, he shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. And whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. So he keeps increasing the penalties, increasing the type of penalties that there will be for your levels of anger, or the type of anger that you have. So anger in and of itself is murder. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar, and he follows it with this, and there remember that your brother has something against you, or I could add you for your brother, then leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. And this is how important it was when Jesus was talking about forgiveness. If you can't forgive your brother, whom Christ died for, if you can't reconcile with your brothers and sisters, if you are harboring all this hatred, how can you come before me and worship me? And we do that, though. In fact, we come to worship God because we're so angry with other people. We go, I better go to church because I hate too many people. And as you're worshiping God, you forget about those other people until you walk out the door, and then you hate them again. Oh, thank you. One time my nose was running, and Michael ran to the bathroom and got a whole bunch of things. And now he's sick. That's what you get, Michael. No, it's okay. But it is true. It's like if we harbor this anger, where does the anger come from? What is it in us that really causes us to get so angry? And I have to confess that in my Christian walk, even as someone who loved God and sought after the Lord and loves most people, I've hated people. I've despised people. I would wake up every morning thinking of what things that I wanted to do to them because they had done things to me. Probably, it might have been a business thing. It might have been where someone ripped me off for money or deceived me. It could have been someone who was gossiping about me or hurting my reputation. My immediate reaction, if I'm walking in the Spirit, is to rise above it and not allow anything to really, to not take offense at anything that anyone says to me. But the fleshly part of me, that part that we struggle with all the time, rises up in unrighteous anger, and I want to get even. Trying to figure out ways to expose them, to hurt them, to get them back. And then I come before God, and I'm worshiping the righteous God and thanking him for dying for my sins, but yet I hate that person, and as soon as I leave the place, I'm hateful all over again. But where do those things come from? James points it out. It comes from within our own members. It comes from within the things of our own heart. It comes from unrighteous anger that we have. So even though we don't see Christians murdering one another for position or for gain, they have murderous anger toward one another. They murder that person's reputation within the church. I think it's taken me a long time to reconcile with God how I have really hurt people's reputations, even if they did deserve it. I have hurt the reputations, and it wasn't mine to do, because it spills out of you when someone hurts you. It spills out of you when someone has burned you, or has become your enemy, and then it just spills out of you, and you become a conduit, not for goodness, but for bitterness and for anger. So you fight in war, yet you don't have what you really need because you do not ask. So lust can't be completely or ultimately satisfied. You lust and do not have. You lust, even if you get what you lust after, you still don't get what you really wanted. You think that that's going to satisfy you, but it never really does. It's something that you think, if I just had this, if I just had this position, if I just had this job, if I just drove that car, if I just had that house, if I could just live in this neighborhood. And we think like that all the time, and there's something in us that tells us that there's truth in that, but ultimately it's a self-deception. Because no matter what you get, it doesn't satisfy. No matter how well you live, the people that live at the highest echelons of the society had never been made peaceful or happy by what they had. Now, it's something that you could argue for. You could say if you have the Lord and you're walking closely with the Lord and your whole life is good, and you live in a nice neighborhood, and you have a nice car, and you live in a nice house, then it's icing on the cake. But those things will never satisfy. And the more of those things that you lay your life upon and expect to be happy from them, the more disappointed you become in life. And that's why people who oftentimes are the most wealthy and powerful in the world are some of the saddest and most depressed people in the world. Because they've gotten to the top of the mountain, they get up to the top, they look around, they plant their flag and their name, and maybe even gold plate their flagpole, and they realize that there's nothing there. They've obtained everything that they were working for, and it's not enough. Because what really needs to happen is they need to have that relationship with Christ.